tells me it's 6:15.
Good evening and welcome to the regular Rosemount City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First of all, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, sir.
So with no changes, or anyone wish to move motion?
So moved.
We have a motion and second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted. We'll move on to presentations, and tonight we have one proclamation for Parks and Recreation Month in Rosemount. I'll turn this over to our Parks and Rec Director, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. This is something that has been happening since the mid-'80s in America. July has been known as National Parks and Recreation Month, and so staff is asking that the City Council consider approving a proclamation calling the month of July Parks and Recreation Month in Rosemount. And this is not about the city, and it's not about all of us. It's about all the people who use the parks. It's about the kids who play in the playgrounds, and the people who are on the disc golf course, and the kids that were out at the splash pad today. And it's about the people that you see walking. And I will tell you that being out in the community, just running around to different projects over the last 2 weeks, during the day, even though it's been 90 degrees, 93 degrees, I cannot believe how many people I see out walking on the trails and or biking. It's really incredible. And so we really want to celebrate the people that use the Parks and Recreation system. We want to make sure that people that are into the arts and senior programming and things like that get recognized as being part of the Parks and Recreation system in Rosemount. We currently have 30 parks in Rosemount. They total 542 acres. We have 40 miles of trails, and we have 61 miles of sidewalks that connect our community. The city offers, and the community in general offers, a variety of recreation programs for people of all ages, between RAAA and RAC and RAHA and a number of other groups. There's something really for everyone in the community. And so that's a great thing about being here in Rosemount. There's always something going on that you can get involved with. Our department specifically, we have over 70 regular part-time and seasonal staff. Most of those are our part-time and seasonal staff, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting. They are the people on the front lines that communicate with the public on a regular basis, and they are the ones that know and understand how vital Parks and Recreation can be to having a well-rounded community. So we do give those people kudos whenever we have that opportunity. That's the one thing that we do work for in our department, is we work to make sure that we are connecting our residents with better facilities and better parks and trails and opportunities for recreation. And so with that, I would turn it back to the mayor, if he would consider a motion to proclaim the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month in Rosemount.
So with that, before I do, I have a proclamation I think I'll read, and then we'll do the motion. So the proclamation states, whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Rosemount, and whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establish and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas parks and recreation activities and leisure experiences provide opportunities for young people to live, grow, and develop into contributing members of society and create a lifetime and continuous life experiences for older members of the community. And whereas our parks and recreation programs increase the community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of local tax base, increased tourism, and the attraction and retention of business, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, and provide vegetation buffers to development and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas Rosemount recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore, I, William Drosty, Mayor of Rosemount, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim July as Parks and Recreation Month in the city of Rosemount. And with that, if anyone would like to move a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor, Councilmember Weisenthal, second, Councilmember Block. Would you please take the roll?
Weisenthal.
Aye.
Block.
Aye.
Drosty.
Aye.
Kresge.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0, and again, I want to say thank you, Dan, and yes, especially during this COVID year and months, the utilization of our trails and parks is very high. So thank you for your
Thank
work.
you.
That concludes the one presentation we have. We'll now move to public comment. Anyone wishing to address the council at this time with a statement or a question may do so. And can you, no one's online?
There hasn't been any.
And if no one's stepping forward to the podium, we'll move on to the consent agenda. First of all, are there any items any council member would like to pull?
Aye.
Any else? So with one item, would anyone like to move a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item I.
I'll second.
We have a motion on the floor, Councilmember Block, a second, Councilmember Fresky. Please take the roll.
Block.
Aye.
Drosty.
Aye.
Kresge.
Aye.
Weisenthal.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0, and we'll now move on to item 6I, approve MnDOT permit construction or contract. I'll turn this over, Councilmember Fresky.
Hi, I wanted to have our Public Works Director, Brian Erickson, give an overview of some of the safety improvements that are going to be made in collaboration with the Minnesota Department of Transportation along downtown Highway 3. One of these intersections specifically is one that I hear quite a bit about because it pertains to Rosemount Elementary and Rosemount Middle School. So any safety improvements I think the public should hear directly about is.
Yep, I think we can pull Brian up. I know he's on the line, so we'll give Jesse a moment to pull him up and talk about this exciting project. And yeah, I think folks, if they've driven through downtown and seen some of the work happening in and around the parking lot, which is one section that Brian will discuss, and then the other is at lower 147th, kind of north of Flegels. But we'll give Brian a chance to fill us in more.
He is unmuted, so he should come up on the screen.
Right. So thank you, Councilmember Fresky. We do have two crosswalk items that are shown there. The big one in the permit request is in order to construct a pedestrian ramp right across from the Steeple Center, and it's at that southern entrance to the park and ride ramp, which if you've been up Highway 3 recently, you would notice that there's work being done there now. That's part of our street improvement project. So we're redoing the pavement in there as well as the pedestrian ramps. And then in 2021, MnDOT will be coming through and constructing additional pedestrian ramp on the west side of the road. And additionally, there will be a median in what is now the left turn lane. So that median area will be used as a pedestrian refuge. It'll be marked as with appropriate traffic signage through there. And so that should provide a much better and much more visible location for crossing. And for anybody who's come up from City Hall along the trail there as well, it comes right into that southern end of the park and ride ramp. So it should make it fairly easy to cross right there, or at least more visible. The other section that's part of the MnDOT project is down in lower 147th. And again, that's a standard cross street there for Trunk Highway 3. And essentially what MnDOT will be doing is improving the pedestrian ramps on both sides of the road and then installing traffic markings. So that one's actually very straightforward, and there was no additional requirement as part of that, as part of that portion of the project.
Just
I
one
think
follow-up
that's-
question. Does the pedestrian ramp include the option for a resident to signal for lights to flash before they cross over?
It does not, based on the current design. That's something, again, that MnDOT hasn't completed the final design on that, so I will be discussing that further with them. But at this point, it does not include that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this item? If not, thank you, Mr. Erickson, and would anyone wish to move a motion?
I'll move a motion to approve a Minnesota Department of Transportation permit to construct to allow for the construction of pedestrian improvements on Minnesota Highway 3.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor, Councilmember Fresky, second, Councilmember Weisenthal. Any other comments? If not, please take the roll.
Droste,
Aye.
Fresky,
Aye.
Weisenthal,
Aye.
Block.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0 and concludes item 6I and all items under the consent agenda. We'll now move on to public hearings, and we have one scheduled this evening, which is an Autumn Path Extension Project, City Project 2019-07 Assessment Hearing. And with that, I'll turn this over to
I think Brian will take this one again.
Mr. Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As part of the Autumn Path Improvement Project, we've gone through a couple of 429, State Statute 429 requirements, one of them being the improvement hearing, and the second one of them is the assessment hearing, which is scheduled for this evening. As part of that, as part of the Bella Vista development, the developer has paid into to constructing their portion of Autumn Path. So the other half would be paid by the property owner on the east side, and that would be the Madami family. As part of the review and the assessment process, the family has forwarded a letter to the city protesting the amount of the assessment. So at this point, the city staff has had a discussion with our benefit appraiser, and we've requested that he provide a little bit more detail. So generally, there are two types of benefit appraisals that are performed. So they have a limited or a restricted version, which is what we had done. And generally, those are about 15 to 20% less cost to have it done that way. The only issue, of course, with that is that because it's a restricted report, it's generally not released in total. And that's because it does not include all of the appraiser's review and all the information that he bases his decisions on. So we've asked our appraiser to go back through and update his restricted report and provide us with an unrestricted report, which can be released in total. It provides all that information that the residents or property owners might want to see. So based on the workload for our appraiser, he's likely to not finish that until late August or early September. So as a result, staff is requesting that the city council actually open the assessment hearing this evening and then continue it until the September 15th city council meeting. So we're not requesting any action be performed this evening. And with
Thank you.
that, I'll leave it at that. We will have a presentation at the continued meeting with additional information. So
Okay.
with that, I'll stand for any questions council may have.
So with that, I'll open up council members if you have any questions of staff. Mr. Erickson at this time. If not, this is a scheduled public hearing, so at this time, I'll now open the podium that anyone that would like to address the council this evening on this topic may do so. If you'd state your name and address and comment, please.
Hello, I'm Brian Madami. I live at 1283 Bon Air Path West, Rosemount, Minnesota. I live at the farm there, and basically what it boils down to is that it doesn't show beneficial usage to us, the farmers, the landowners there. It's benefiting Lennar to the west. There's no housing to the west of our property at all. That's what it boils down to. That's why we're protesting it. I guess that's it. I leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. And more or less that's stated in the letter.
Yep.
And thank you for your comments. And is there anyone else online?
There's one person online, but they have not said anything.
Now, if they want to speak, they have to raise their hand at the bottom of the screen, and you're not showing,
No.
okay, anyone. So with that, the recommendation here is to continue the public hearing until September 15th, 2020. Yes,
Oh,
go ahead.
Motion to call and continue the assessment hearing for Autumn Path Extension Project, City Project 2019-07.
I'll second.
We have a motion on the floor, Councilmember Weisenthal, second, Councilmember Block. And with that, please, no other comments, take the roll.
Fresky?
Aye.
Weisenthal?
Aye.
Block?
Aye.
Droste?
Aye. Motion carries 4-0, so for your perspective, we'll address this public hearing and you can speak again on September 15th, 2020. So with that, that concludes the public hearing before us. We do not have any unfinished business or new business, so we'll move on to announcements. And with that, I'll turn over to our city administrator, Mr. Martin.
Thanks,
Any
Mayor.
updates?
Thanks, Mayor, members of council. Just one update tonight, just to follow up with the council, but mostly for residents at home. Council met on a work session earlier tonight to discuss a number of items of interest. One is the work that has begun on the 2021 budget, and so that work will continue. As the residents are aware, we will establish a ceiling for our levy in September and then move forward in December. And so council will continue that work in August, but and go forward from there. But of more interest potentially is we continue to track and implement the fact that the city did receive some CARES Act funding via the state of Minnesota and the federal government. And so we're working on what programming might look like in response to the fact that the city is slated to receive some funding from the CARES Act. A couple items of interest in there that the council is considering would be a business grant program, potentially in partnership with the Community Development Agency of Dakota County. So some additional relief for our small business owners, and then some other items that may have impact on more of the residential level as well. So we will continue to track that and make the public aware of that. But good news for the city to receive some funding and then find ways to implement it to help folks that are dealing with impacts of COVID-19. And then lastly, I'll mention, you may notice that we're partially set up here as a voting location, and we've flipped into a city council chambers for tonight, but this is your voting location for absentee voting. We are open from 8 to 4:30 here at City Hall for absentee voting, and so would encourage folks as they feel necessary to come in and do absentee voting up until the August primary. So with that, pass it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Upcoming on the city calendar, first of all, there's a free movie in the park this Saturday, July 11th at 9:30 p.m. Bring your own seating. If you have concerns, you can call, because of weather, 651-322-6020. On Tuesday, July 14th, the Planning Commission meets here in council chambers at 6:30 p.m. On Tuesday, July 21st, the Environmental and Sustainability Committee meets at 5:30 p.m. And the next Port Authority and City Council meeting is Tuesday, July 21st, with Port Authority at Port Authority at 6 p.m. and Council at 7 p.m. And last, I just make a comment. Still under state guidelines, wear a mask in public whenever you can, and shop local, help support our businesses as they're trying to open up. And with that, if there are no further comments, I'll make a motion to adjourn and reconvene the work session.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting's adjourned. Thank you.